Good afternoon, everyone. This is Uma Balakrishnan from the Industry Connect Alliances and Placement team. Along with me on panel, we have Mr. Vishal Mehra, Chief Business Officer, Country Head, Industry Connect Alliances and Placements. Sir, please kindly address a few motivational words to our esteemed audience who have joined us today for the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Uma, and thank you for that warm welcome. I'm very flattered to be here with Vijay today, and I'm very anxious to hear his session. For those of you who don't have an insight into this personality, you should know that he's an AppTech alumnus, okay? He graduated out of AppTech in 2006, and since then, and I'm not going to take away from his conversation with you, his career graph has gone in one direction. It's gone up this way. Extremely talented, an enthusiast, loves what he does, excels at what he does, has great interpersonal relationships, and these are bits and pieces of his conversation with you that I am already stealing. He's been in touch with his first boss, who also is, by his own admission, his mentor. A fabulous career graph, and somebody whom everybody who ever aspired to do anything in the media and entertainment space, and specifically the gaming space. Today's speaker, Mr. Vijay Srivinasan, should be your role model. His story will fascinate you. His journey will excite you. And where he is today and what he's doing today, I wish somebody had guided me so I would have been able to do it too. And he's one of the few people on the planet who are responsible for the fact that most of our audience today don't make eye contact with each other in public transportation. We're all playing a game, which at some point or other, in some form or the other, Vijay has contributed to. So Vijay, while you are the bane of the parental class, you are also the hero of the new generation, Gen Z.
Yes.
So I'm not going to stand between you and your audience. A warm welcome to all of you. There are about 300 of you logged in now. And please enjoy this. Vijay loves to share his knowledge, and he's anxious to share his life journey with all of you who aspire to walk a similar path. So please ask a lot of questions of him. I'm sure Vijay being Vijay will be more than happy to answer you, guide you, and put your steps on the right path. With that, Vijay, over to you, and thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This is a personal favor.
Thank you, Vishal, sir.
Thank
I think
you,
it's
sir.
a kind introduction. So before I get going, Uma ma'am, do you want to set the stage and probably I can take it over?
Thank you, Vijay. Vishal sir has already told. Yes, of course, it's a very pride moment for all of us at AppTech for to have you here as Arena alumni batch pass out of 2006. So a pride moment for all of us. With that, yes, Vijay Srinivasan is the CEO and studio director at Hammerplay. We have lots to, and excited to hear from him. So with that, we move on to the first question. See, everybody says like once when it comes to entrepreneurship, does it start with money or does it start with an idea? Does this phrase hold good with you, hold true for you rather? Or if you can just walk us through your journey, your path, and how did it all start? Very excited to hear from you. Over to you, Vijay.
Actually, a very interesting question. See, I think as far as I think I have experienced, entrepreneurship is more of a mindset than anything, because we're always surrounded by small businesses. It's just that we don't really notice or acknowledge them as entrepreneurs. I think even a small scale shop owner is an entrepreneur in true sense. So I believe it's a mindset. So once you get into that mindset, you start to build a conviction around your idea, which can then slowly turn into a good sort of a real business. So I think what is the key here is you have to start figuring out how to start in a lean manner. While money is needed, I believe even before money is needed, as in you have to figure out whether you are in the entrepreneur's shoes yet. And then you figure out how to start in a lean manner, and then you slowly start scaling your way up. In that sense, I believe entrepreneurship doesn't really need money to begin with. Yes, there is a resource need. I believe money as a tool, as a resource is needed. But I believe the very idea of getting into the mindset supersedes everything. And then you start figuring out how to sort of bring the resources. I'll give you my example, because when I started Hammerplay 9 years back in 2014, I did not have any access to any form of external funding. We're talking about VCs and angel investors these days. We see how startups raise multi-million dollars, right? In fact, 10 years back, I don't think it was that prevalent. So I had to start with what I had, with whatever little resources. So I went for the most basic things possible. I'll give you some rudimentary examples. Right from the computers to furniture to office space, we were trying to conserve cash as much as possible, right? This is what the in modern context we call bootstrapping, right? This is basically what bootstrapping is all about. You go with a very lean and frugal mentality. You don't splurge on unnecessary things. To be very candid with you, I still remember we used to buy used computers, like second-hand computers, used graphics cards, because we couldn't afford buying like new graphics cards. We used to buy used furniture in order to save cash wherever possible, and it offered tremendous value. And the fun fact is, in fact, this habit sort of stuck on to us. In fact, even after growing the company to this extent, we still practice that. Whenever we see a good value, whether it's a used or probably already held by someone, we try to sort of procure that, because it offers tremendous value. Because the thing is, in these days of VC funding, right, it's not very uncommon to see companies burning on things that are extravagant, only to realize later that they have overspent and they need to cut down costs. In fact, I would argue that even when you are a scaling company, when you have grown to a certain extent, the frugal mindset is really needed so that the business can thrive. So in all probability, this expression, this question is true in my case. Yes, entrepreneurship doesn't really only need money. You just don't need just money. You rather need conviction. I hope that answers your question.
Vijay. Yes. So thank you so much for that. Now, the next question is, was there an inspiration or a motivation which you looked upon, for your dream come true, a role model or something like, okay, fine, I have to, somebody like that. Was there something like that which inspired you? Can you please a little bit elaborate on to, so
Sure.
that it becomes a learning for all of the rest of them who have joined the call today?
Sure. I think, dreaming to become an entrepreneur, I think it's one of the wildest dreams one can actually get into, because quite often it's not a very smoother journey. It's not a cakewalk as such, right? Because it's definitely filled with a lot of challenges. But I believe a starting stage to anyone who's aspiring to become an entrepreneur must have an inspiration. I think in my case, I was actually pretty privileged to have people whom I was able to look up to. I always say this in every stage I share. My first boss, Mr. Arun Ambat, who recruited me when I was fresh out of the institute back in 2006, I definitely owe everything to him, because he was a great inspiration for me. There was some level of coolness and swag with him that I really admired. I think that really got etched into my head. The way he handled a problem statement, the way he handled, say, a character design or an animation sequence, I was able to learn the sort of thought process he puts behind his creative decisions. And if you look at it, some of the best creative professionals, they are what they are because of the thought process they bring onto the table. I think I have since looked upon several other people during my career. My boss from my game shastra days, from whom I learned the knack of running a business, how to be both flexible and firm in dealing with business prospects. I learned the power of meeting people face to face, no matter which corner of the world they are in. This is a practice I still do to this date. If there is a serious business conversation, I do not mind where that person is. No matter which corner of the world I travel, I meet them and I ensure the business deal is closed. And in fact, these are things that you really pick up from such individuals. One other person was a huge inspiration for me when I was to be producing these PlayStation games, is the former PlayStation director, one Mr. Shahid Ahmed, from whom I used to learn what it takes to be a good producer, what to look for in a game, what it takes to build a great game. And I've drawn inspiration from several sources in that sense. So to speak, I believe apart from people, a lot of the things that inspired me, and I think one of the most instrumental forms of inspiration for me was this movie called King Kong. I'm pretty sure most of you would have seen it. This is a movie that came in 2005, made by Peter Jackson, who also made movies, who also made the Lord of the Rings series. That King Kong movie blew me away. In fact, that was the time I was obviously studying, in Arena, part of AppTech. I was going through my animation program, and this movie like literally blew us away. In fact, that sort of made me learn the craft more. I was involving myself more with 3D modeling, animation, CGI and all that, right? I think that was a huge sort of inspirational milestone. And then progressively speaking, from a games perspective, my huge inspirations have always been, people like Hideo Kojima, who was the creator of Metal Gear Solid. I don't know if, I think some of the audience could relate to this game. Hopefully they should have seen this game. And companies like Valve, who are the creators of games like Half-Life and Counter-Strike, huge inspirations when it comes to how to go about running a video games company, how to go about creating such class-leading games that people play for ages. So yeah, I think I could go on and on when it comes to inspiration. But I believe, yes, I've always been guided by inspiration. Yeah.
Very interesting, Vijay. Very interesting. So this is also a message to all the students who have joined us today on the call, what Vijay has, spoken about. Now, Vijay, coming up to the next question, like, what will be a kind of support system or a mentorship for a student who seek to achieve his dream come true of being a boss, of his own boss? Is there a message which you can convey to them, what they can look up to, to take up to this?
I think yet another interesting question, but it is also an area that one must be pretty careful about. If you ask me in a very candid way, if this is something that, of course, there are students listening to me as we speak. Let me start this way. Mentorship is invaluable if the student is able to get it. And of course, from where they are already going through these courses, I'm very certain they are under good mentorship, at AppTech, at Arena, right? Because even though the internet is full of online courses, whatnot, we can just read and learn ourselves. I think a mentorship can help transform a student from being a student into a thorough professional. Okay, in my case, I was able to experience it like very evidently. Of course, we came from an era where we never had access to a lot of online resources because it was just the start of the internet boom and all that. I'm talking about early 2000s. But right now, the state is different because at the touch of a button, we have access to many resources. But it is also an issue. I would call it a double-edged sword, because too much information is also a problem, right? Because you're just lost. You just don't know what to even sort of learn. So I would say mentorship would go a long way. But on the other hand, talking about support system, right? The
Yeah.
best form of support system for students is to build their own support system by forming a team. Because students typically what they do is they work on portfolios, they work on their year-end projects, they try to sort of work on their own demo reel, etc. Right? Quite often, what we notice is they try to sort of do everything. They try to belong everywhere, which usually sort of backfires, because they will not be able to justice or justify a character model, an environmental model, or an animation altogether. So this is why I would always recommend students try to sort of build their own support systems by teaming up with each other. Okay, this way they can actually function as a team. Let's say they have a project that they sort of want to work on. 2 to 3 students can come together, form a team, assign the roles. One can actually be good at creating characters, one can actually be rigging an animation, one can actually create the set design and all that. This way they'll leverage their strengths, and they will be able to also create much more ambitious stuff that you actually cannot build alone, because that's a mistake that we did in the past. When I try to create a demo reel, I still remember this. I don't know what I was even thinking, but I tried to recreate a sequence from the first Matrix movie. There's a very famous subway fight between Neo and the agent, and this happens in a subway. So I went on to sort of do my own character models that looked similar to the characters. I created the whole subway set. There were trains and all that, and then I created the slow motion bullet sequence. I don't know, looking back, people appreciated me for the whole effort I took, but the reality is that the output sort of fell short of expectation because I couldn't do justice to everything. Because in a real life scenario, when students graduate, when they find opportunities in a professional studio like ours, they'll actually be given a role to perform. Mostly, at least larger studios, they actually will give them a very specific role to perform. So it is important that they find their strength by operating as a team. That results in a very sort of a much higher quality output. Like I said, they can leverage their strengths in the process and figure out what they are good at. So to answer your question, the best form of support system that they can create, apart from any external resource, is to create their own internal support system. So if they are part of a class with 20-30 students, and if they want to basically work on projects, I would always recommend that they form teams or little groups, and then these groups can actually interface with the mentor and then seek their guidance. So I hope this sort of answers the question.
Well, thank you, Vijay. Vijay, our audience today are more keen and interested to know your journey, your pass out from the college, joining Arena, and then taking off that. Can you just go a little bit depth onto it from your start?
Sure. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Looking back, it's funny, because years have passed. I could present this like a flashback in a movie, but yeah, I mean, here it goes. So I believe the year is 2003 is when I started my college, and then in parallel I was enrolling myself, with Aptech Arena Multimedia to pursue I believe it's called the Advanced Diploma in Multimedia back in time. It was a I think,
Yes.
yeah, I still remember it. I think it's called ADIM. Yeah, right. And then, so that sort of, I ensured that I did it for 3 years. That will time well with my Loyola College Commerce graduation. And then, just fresh out of the college, I got an opportunity with a Chennai-based animation company. But then I just did not get it straight away. That journey itself was pretty demanding and like I said, looking back, it looks even funny now, because when I went with the demo reel to my first boss, Mr. Arun, he dismissed it outright. In fact, I was brimming with confidence, right? And I thought I was the star kid, out of the class, because people appreciated me for all the stuff that I did. But you go to a professional studio, they rate you, they sort of, they basically will dismantle you, right? So Mr. Arun dismantled me. He said, this is not going to cut it, because you just cannot do everything. I need to know what you're really good at, what you're specifically good at. Then I told him, sir, I think I'm good at animation. Then he told me, you have to show me a small piece of animation. It could be 10-15 seconds, but it should be simple, but it should have that high quality animation feel to it. It should follow all the principles of animation. If I am convinced, I'll hire you. So it was posted to me as a challenge. So I go back home, obviously with a sort of a discouraged feel, but then I'm also sort of enthused right now, because he's also shown me like what it takes to do that. So I look at this short film called Luxo Junior, which is like a short film that Pixar made back in time. It's basically two lamps interacting with each other. There's a like a father lamp and there's a kid lamp, and they play ball and all that. So I looked at that short film, it caught my attention, and I tried to recreate that little sequence. I believe I took about 15-20 seconds of sequence out of that. I tried to recreate that in 3ds Max. So what I did is I quickly modeled the lamp. I gave it a rig, and then I tried to sort of, light the scene. And then I did the animation, right? So it took me that's when I realized what it takes to go down to the details, what it takes to sort of look at things from a simpler perspective, keeping it simple. And the keeping it simple principle, that's when I started to learn. So I somehow managed to pull it off. I went back to my showroom and he was thoroughly impressed. He said, this is exactly what I want to do. Now I'll give you a shot. I was obviously, on cloud 9, and I got my first job and all that, right? So that's when, I think this was a career defining moment for me, because if this did not happen, I don't think I would have probably gone anywhere from there, because I would have probably assumed that I'm already doing great. So I think this was a, sort of a pinching moment. I was shown the reality bites. And then I worked with them for a while. I was learning the trade. I was part of some of their gaming projects, animation projects. But then until then, I don't think I had the idea of moving to games, because games was not really a thing from a career perspective. Animation was just booming. And then 2007, I got the opportunity to work with Game Shastra, because they were setting up their large studio in Hyderabad. And that was a leap of faith for me, because as a kid, I've never even moved out of Chennai until 2006. I've never stepped out of my comfort zone. So I believe, again, I took that leap of faith. I don't know what made me do that, but I took that leap of faith. And that journey was fascinating, because I took some bold steps, because from being an animator, I thought I'll move to become an environment artist. So I was fascinated by the locations, the backgrounds in games. So I thought I'll give it a shot. So I started modeling, I started doing set modeling, 3D backdrops and all that. That was pretty fascinating. And then from environment art, I started moving up the ladder pretty soon to becoming a lead artist for a game. And then fast forward a few more years, I become an associate art director to an associate producer. And then I went on to become a producer, where I started handling larger games across different platforms like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. And I had the privilege of working on some of the top franchises like, Farmville from Zynga, Gardens of Time from Disney. I used to work on, games like Days of Thunder, Top Gun, and then a few domestic top movies, movie-based games like Dawn, Krish, 24, and all that. So all that happened like back to back, and I was able to. So I started building the vision of being the product owner or the, they usually call it producer in games. So I was able to sort of, start looking at games from a much, holistic perspective. I enjoyed the idea of working with different departments, artists, developers, testers, designers, audio engineers, and then interfacing with the platform stakeholders, ensuring the product gets delivered. So that was pretty fascinating. But at the same time, I also started to feel some amount of saturation, because what happened is, from a creative role, obviously I was elevated to a management role, because ultimately I was promoted to as a VP of game development and art. So I was basically heading pretty much, the majority portion of the company. But then I thought, maybe I need to dial myself down and then try to sort of, build games that I really enjoyed. So I decided to move on for both professional and personal reasons. By 2014, I moved back to Chennai. And then I go through a lot of personal difficulties. That's the boring part. I'll skip that. And then Hammerplay happens in 2014. So towards the end of the year, I'm setting up this company, and I had no idea. Like, I had no idea as to how this is all going to pan out, because, obviously I couldn't access any of my former colleagues because they wouldn't really buy into this. And then no one wants to move from all the way from Hyderabad to Chennai to sort of work for a non-existing brand or a company. And then it was a gut feel, right? It was a shot in the dark. And then I started to sort of look for suitable talent with whatever resources I had access to, with whatever network I had built already. So I started to sort of, build the core team. The idea was to not just build games, but just build a great team. And then you throw anything at them, they can build anything. That was the idea. And then we started very lean, frugal, bootstrapped. We've had months where we could not meet payroll. We couldn't pay salaries to each other. We've had several rough, we sailed through those rough waters, right, that typically businesses go through in the initial phases. But I had a tremendous support from both my wife, my family, and the team with who I still work with. All my founding employees are still with me, for the past 9 years or 8-9 years now. So we held on as a team. We believed in the vision of building like a world-class game development studio. Fast forward 9 years, we're still here making a mark. So that's
very interesting, Vijay. Very interesting. There's a question from one of the student also on the same ground. Sneha, I want to know, how did you build your team? How did you build your team?
How did I build a team?
Your team.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, see, good question, Sneha, because see, team building is the most crucial aspect. And in fact, I like the way how you put this question simply. How did you build the team? In fact, that is the magic ingredient, right? Because without the team, the company is going to only have chairs, computers, and walls. I think people really define what we do here. It's an experimental affair, to be honest, because you just don't know who's the right fit until you start working with them. Because at the stage of interview, you can be driven by a slight amount of gut feel. You sort of see their enthusiasm. Not much is going to matter as to what they have done in the past. What matters is what they're going to bring to the table. So I practice the idea of, looking at people into their eyes, talking to them, really trying to get a feel of if he or she is going to be a fit. And I'm a huge believer of work culture. All we see is whether they are a cultural fit. I don't really worry about whether they are from the gaming domain. Have they built several games? Of course, they need to exhibit the fundamental skills of being an artist or a designer or a programmer. But what matters is, are they a cultural fit? Are they willing to be part of this vision or buy into the idea of building a very high quality tight, agile game development studio. So I believe whosoever bought into the idea, I had to be honest, I blindly trusted that they would make the cut. In the process, I've made some hiring mistakes also in the past, being very honest, because part of the journey, you also realize that not everyone makes the cut. Not everyone is meant, to be, or not everyone can actually go through this journey with you. So that's how the core team fell in place. We ensured that we got the right kind of art guy, right kind of guy for development, design. That's how the core team fell in place. With this, we were able to expand the team, and then there was word of mouth. We were, sort of putting the information out there, and then we got more people on board. So that's how the journey started.
That's interesting, Vijay. That's interesting. See, I have a question. This is based on the student's point of view. Can a creative mindset, right, but lack financially as well as managerial skills, can they also, dream of becoming their own boss?
I'll tell you what. See, I think being creative, the creative mindset is only the start. I think it probably allows you to take that first step. That's all there is. But like it or not, the reality is you need to build managerial skills, because ultimately, when you want to be your own boss, right? When you want to become, or when you want to dream of becoming your own boss, what it means is you need to be a boss of someone, right? If you are your own boss, then you need a bunch of people to report to you. That's how it works. So you need to be able to run a team in order to become your own boss, because only when you are their boss, you become your own boss, which means inherently speaking, you need to build a managerial skill set. Because the moment you say you are your boss, you're basically saying you need people to report to you. That naturally requires managerial skills. Now, financial management is something that you can learn as you progress, because even in my case, as much as I had exposure to management, I had exposure to sort of, costing, I had exposure to how to sort of, price a certain work, all that, but I never had complete exposure to companies' financial management. So that is something that I had to learn as the journey progressed. But as long as you have an open mind, you can pretty much learn everything, right? Because in this case, I was able to learn it from my accountants and auditors. As long as you're surrounded by capable, smart people, you just need to watch and learn. And that is the biggest advantage of being an entrepreneur. Without any preemptive notion, you can actually learn anything as long as you are willing to. So in this case, I thought, okay, what? I'm a clean slate. I can write whatever I want on myself, as long as I'm willing to. So an open mind in business will go a long way. But to circle back and answer the question, yes, a creative mind can dream of becoming your own boss, but only when you are equipping yourself with the right sort of a skill set. We can't ignore certain skill sets, certain fundamental skill sets, because as much as you can go in, it's basically just throwing yourself into the water. But unless you know the basics of swimming, it's going to be very hard to survive. So that I believe is the answer.
Thank you, Vijay. Vijay, there are questions coming up from the students asking, graduation must to become an entrepreneur?
No.
Okay, so that answers. So how do you think your company is different from others? Say Hammerplay stands different from others.
No, see, we don't really do anything intentional to stand apart from others. In fact, I'm not really a believer of competition as such, because games industry has grown so much. It is offering so much of space and opportunity that you are able to just carve out your own niche. So as long as you are focusing on creating the games that you want to build and serve the market that you want to serve, in the process you become unique. In fact, if you look at it, I'm pretty sure by now in India, there are over 100 game development companies in India, right? Like the familiar ones, they're still handful if you really talk about it. But if you sort of put them on a gauge, right, each one is unique.
Correct.
That's the ultimate reality. But as a company, we don't really make any conscious effort to stand apart. I think the product decisions or the decisions we make to build certain games or to serve a certain market, in the process, we maybe stand out from the competition. For example, we are one of those rare companies in India who focuses highly on web games. We build a lot of browser instant games, much high quality. Like these are games that are on par to Android, iOS games, but we build the same quality for browser. In the process, people notice us, and then when they think there is a market fit, they end up working with us. So I think it's a combination of your product decisions and the strategy will make you unique.
Thank you, Vijay. Vijay, there's another interesting question which has come in. How did you manage networking while working and studying?
No, I think, see, the funny thing here is, again, a good question. The funny thing here is I've always been an introvert in my life. This is until my college days. I need to admit the fact that I was actually very poor at networking. I always had some sort of resistance to go talk to people. I can't just go talk to them in person. I'll probably have some sort of an anxiety. I can't look into their eyes and talk to them.
I remember that, Vijay.
Yeah, you've seen me, right? You've seen me 15 years back. Or
Yeah.
years back. You've seen me. I think we've we've always met each other in different events. So I believe you will have some idea.
Yes.
Right? So I think and then as you progress, right, as you wanted to progress, you realize the importance of networking. And then what I did was I put a lot of focus, internally speaking, on refining my communication and articulation skills. So I started to, I don't know, maybe what I did was, it could sound funny, but then it's a proven method. I started to practice my communication oratory skills by looking into the mirror. Every single day, I stand in front of the mirror. I would probably talk a random topic as though I'm presenting to like an audience, or to a client where I'm pitching an idea. That actually greatly improved my confidence. So I believe, simply put, I was able to work on my confidence and communication skills, and that led to more networking, and that ultimately led to sort of leveraging the network to sort of build a business.
Yeah. Thank you, Vijay. There's a question from Pavan Nair, a student. Recently, Mayhem Studios, creator of Underworld, Gang Wars, raised over $20 million from companies like Truecaller, etc. What are your views onto it? And do you think gaming in India is finally getting recognition?
I got to appreciate the insight behind this question. Yes. Who was this question from? Which, what's the name?
It's a Pavan Nair. Yeah.
Pavan. So Pavan, wherever you are, good question, bro, because you've sort of went into the depth of it. You're following the industry. In fact, you're going to quote as to what this company is, what money they've raised. I think he's talking about Mayhem Studios, which is a subsidiary of MPL, with who we work with. MPL is our customer. And recently they raised this 20 million to sort of, I think, further propel their game development ambitions. See, I think these are signs that investors are recognizing the talent. I don't want to give misleading data about how big the industry is, because there are these numbers people usually attach, that the industry is worth X amount of million or billion. I'm not going to get into all the data right now, because that could go either way. But what is happening right now is from when we started, like for example, our company to where we are, there's been a tremendous improvement in terms of the ecosystem. Because in the last 8-9 years, I would have myself witnessed over at least more than 20 companies, starting up, and then, going to different directions. And then VCs or investors are finally looking at this landscape. They're starting to put, bet on these companies, like, hoping that, they're going to have like better returns. I think, see, this is a great sign of recognizing talent. I think this is the most crucial step in terms of, because this is how, if you go back in time, this is how software companies grew.
Yes.
Just that we don't have it in our memory now, but if you go back in time 25-30 years back, this is how software was non-existent. I think it was only existing in Bangalore. There was a time where these companies were getting started slowly, and then the world took notice, right? So if you look at it, it's very interesting that these VCs are not just coming from India. These are investors coming from Western countries, from Europe, from US, looking at the Indian landscape and, betting on such talents. So yeah, I think the next 5 years will be more interesting. I think there's definitely going to be higher standard of games coming, because developers in India now recognize or realize that there is no other choice but to compete with Western studios or studios abroad, right? There is little competition between the Indian companies, so to speak, because the moment you start getting access to such VC money, your ultimate aim is to go global. Of course, you can think local and act global. You can have an Indianized experience that you can still take it and scale it for the global markets. But ultimately, it has to have a globally appealing, package in the form of a game. So I believe, yes, I think it'll be interesting to see the next 3 to 5 years, and the quality of games will considerably go higher. If you look at 10 years back and compare it with the quality of games that we're producing now, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. We were, honestly, we were able to get away by producing slightly mediocre content 10 years back, but there is no way we can do it right now. We absolutely have to produce top quality content, because even our Indian gamers, players playing on even mobile Android, on their phones, they are used to top quality games right now. So there is no choice but to create high standard games, and such infusion of investors' money will further allow us to propel. But this isn't to dismiss. This isn't to say that companies who don't raise funding can't do this. Like we've still not raised any funding. We're still bootstrapped. We're still privately funded. I think it's a question of what the team or what the company sort of desires to do. In this case, as an example, like I said, in Mayhem's case, I think they are looking to sort of propel themselves much faster, thereby creating a larger impact. But yes, to answer your question, there's definitely going to be influx of higher quality games.
Thank you, Vijay. Very interesting question next, Vijay.
Absolutely.
How much do you enjoy being your own boss?
You want the honest answer, or do you want me to sugarcoat?
Honest answer.
Okay. So here is the honest answer. Being your own boss can both be a pleasure and a pain. It's foremost, it's pleasure. I'll admit it's absolute joy, but it's a pain because it's also a pain because, see, when you have a team, when you have a reporting manager or a boss, you invariably tend to look up to them for taking certain critical decisions or consult them. But when you are your own boss, the journey is lonely. There's this, usually you don't have, not often you have people to consult, because you're on your own, right? You need to take decisions on your own. So I would say it's a tightrope walk. You need to balance yourself with the right sort of priorities, because quite often people can perceive that being your own boss should be fun, because they can work whenever they want, they can come whenever they want, leave whenever they want. But that, I would say, that's mostly a myth. In fact, it's the opposite. When you are your own boss, you end up clocking more hours than anyone in the team, because ultimately it's your baby. The company is yours. It's your baby. You need to care for it. You need to nurture it. No one can replace you in that sense, right? Because you have to live and breathe that day in, day out. So, but see, through the course of the journey, right, you will feel the pressure, but it's a very positive pressure on your shoulder, right? But once you scale the operation to a certain extent, things can go on an autopilot mode. It can sort of run on its own, but it also doesn't mean that you can take your eyes off the target. You still have to keep a watch. It's more like a fire watch position. And when there is a fire, you need to know when to get down and put out that fire. So like I said, it's a tightrope walk. But having said that, I personally enjoy the responsibility that comes with with being a leader of the company. It feels very rewarding to know, because you're creating impact on several lives. For example, I have several employees. I know I am making an impact on their lives. I'm able to give them a career, hence they are able to build their personal lives. So I would say it's not the glamour I am enjoying the most, but the responsibility and the positive status it gives me among my peers and the society. That positive status is what I enjoy.
That's very interesting, Vijay. Very interesting, and a very good message to all the audience who have joined us today. The next question, Vijay. We would like to hear your success stories and your downfalls, if any.
If I started talking about my downfall, I believe we need another couple of hours today.
But every time you fall, the more you get motivated, the more
every time I have fallen, every time I've fallen, I think I have gotten out of it much. It's like a springboard, right? You compress a spring, it's going to really bounce back. Right?
Yes.
That's you don't realize all these philosophies when you fall for the first time. When you fall for the first time, you think it's a very hard fall, but you keep falling, you become numb. You build that resilience. So see, success is very relative to one's position. I'm not sure if I am qualified yet to call out success stories, but I'll tell you this. The biggest success story, if I can even call it out, is how we were able to withstand for the last 9 years now. We are entering the 10th year, like a decade, without any sort of external funding. No VC money. We've not raised any. We've not got any loans from anyone. We did not borrow from anyone, and in the process, we became a profitable company. And we were able to give handsome salaries to people. We have given them stakes in the company. We have given them bonuses and all that. So I think there's something to it. I think I keep saying this. I think more than me, my team says this, that there's something to this journey, that we are able to do this with no external support. So maybe in that sense, I may want to call it as a success story. But downfalls, I've had plenty. That is the most I would say cherishable part of this journey, because we've had instances where we've lost projects for no fault of ours. We've also made critical mistakes where we have lost like high value projects. In the last 9 years, God knows how many crores I would have lost. I don't know. I mean, it happens, but I don't really look back and then keep wondering or keep dwelling on those mistakes or on those setbacks or failures. What happens is the moment you get into the whole entrepreneurship, right? You are always forward looking. You are constantly looking for the path forward rather than dwelling on your failures. So I believe, yeah, if I have to give you a ratio, this ratio is filled with more downfalls than success. That's how it is so far. And every year we go through this, like last year was extremely dull, in terms of business performance, in terms of market outlook. And there is this whole feeling of recession looming above our heads and all that. But then this year we have a renewed enthusiasm. We are looking at like greater prospects. We are entering into newer platforms, newer segments. We have built more games right now. So I think it's a question of how we perceive this. But yeah, I think I always embrace. I usually don't call it failures, but I usually embrace pitfalls. I would like to call them pitfalls or maybe roadblocks. I fully embrace them, and that is essential to business.
Great. Thank you, Vijay. Vijay, the next question is, what
Yeah.
is your thought on specialization of animation?
Mhm.
Is it different in games from movies? This is from a student.
Good question. Very interesting question. In fact, there are two different kind of animals. Quite often, animators may think that if you are an animator for an animation studio or a movie, you could easily transition to games. Yes, with the fundamental skill set, yes. But from applying them technically, they're actually different. They're actually two different spectrums. Because I'll give you an example. With in an animation studio, or when you're animating for a movie, you are handed out shots. You're given a shot. Your lead animator would explain the shot to you, or the animation director would explain the shot. He'll basically give you a storyboard, and then the lead animator could even give you the keyframes, and then he talks about the sequence, and then there is a different guy for camera and all that. With games, it's a totally different affair. With games, you as an animator, you need to build the technical ability to work with the game developer or the game programmer. And then it is a very iterative process. You need to build these animations in bits and pieces. These animations are never built as one full length or one full shot. These are built as what we call as cycles. So when you're looking at a shooting game, there is a walk cycle, a run cycle, a shooting animation that depends on what weapon is. With every weapon, the animation will change. So there's a death animation. There could be like a flinch animation. There could be different emotes, dance moves, whatever, right? So these are all built as different cycles, which means you need to learn how to loop them properly, set them up in one space, create the animation, make sure it loops, export it out to the to the game engine, and then go work with the developer, make sure the animation works in the game, then play the game yourself. So it's a lot more extensive as a process, and you're a lot more involved as a game animator. In that sense, it's extremely different from like film animations or animation movies. But the fundamentals of animation, or the fundamental principles of animation, does not change. Be it timing, staging, anything to do with the principles of animation doesn't really change. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. Vijay, there's a question again. Let me put it like this. What make you stand different in the industry when you compare yourself with the other studios? You come up the hard way. You had the struggles, you had the falls, you had the growth, you had the climbing. So what make you special?
No, I think the point is, I don't think we try to perceive ourselves or perceive myself as probably being a unique breed or being special. But I believe it's how the team it's how the team is structured or formed, because I think our magic recipe is the team. I think in most cases, I just bring in the overall strategy, or sometimes I just reiterate the vision, but I believe it depends on how the team takes that and runs with it. So I believe it's to do with how we as a team operate. We are quick, we are agile, we're creative. So I think it's a combination of all these different factors that could make us pretty unique and special. And there is a binding culture we have, like in the studio, because we are a smaller company, right? No one reports to no one. Like no one reports to me as their boss. Like there is no leave policy in the company. Like people don't really have to apply for leaves. People don't have to report to each other. There is no need to apply for a permission if they're coming late. So I think what we have done is we've basically made a very transparent and a trust-based culture as a team, and we've always relied on our work culture, and that enables people to go the extra mile because they know that they are equally empowered. They know that they don't need to go to Vijay to get his approval, get his consent, etc., unless it is a very critical issue. So what is happening is we let people to commit mistakes, learn from them, as long as they don't repeat the mistake. This empowers them. This means we are able to create pretty much magic, because even when we onboard an intern to the studio, the intern has the same set of liberty that the senior most guy in the team has, and that they quickly realize that, and this lets them go the extra mile. So I believe our magic ingredient is our culture.
Well, thank you, Vijay. Thank you so much. One last question. This is from the same boy who asked us, Pranam Nair. Okay. Can a bootstrapped company excel to a certain level like other companies who have raised funds in the past?
Pranav, so the answer to Pranav is, Pranav, we should look at Zoho. All of us know Zoho. Zoho is a bootstrap company. Zoho never raised even a single rupee of external funding. They are a multi-billion-dollar company. So it's possible. It's a question of how you organize yourself and how you plan your trajectory, right? So this isn't to dismiss companies who are raising funds and becoming like great players in the segment, but there is something that is very rewarding to being a bootstrap company and then making it big there, because you are not really answerable to external investors. You are not under pressure from other investors. You can actually own the full pie to yourself. That's what Mr. Sridhar Vembu did for Zoho. They had so many occasions or opportunities to raise funds or getting acquired. They said, no, we will actually go on our own.
Well, Vijay, thank you so much. With this, we come to the close of this session. Would like to again take make a note of thanks to Vijay Srivinasan, who has joined us today, sharing insights of his journey as well as a successful entrepreneur. Aptech wishes you all the success for your future. Sir, would you like to mention a few words?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Vijay, thank you very much for taking the time. Very informative as expected, very detailed as expected. Some very interesting questions were asked, and thank you for giving them excellent answers. One thing is very clear that, the first thing you bring to being your own boss is your passion, your commitment.
Exactly.
I think that it becomes the starting point. And everything after that is just your determination and your desire to succeed. And this you highlighted so many different times in so many excellent ways during your speech. I'm sure all of our students have benefited from it. Now, this is segment of our students. आप लोगों में से कई ने कहा यार इंग्लिश में ही बात करते जा रहे, किसी और भाषा में बात कर लो। ये भाषा की जो झगड़े हैं ना, अब ये हम छोड़ ही देते हैं यार। द लैंग्वेज ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन इन बिजनेस टुडे इन द वर्ल्ड ओवर इज इंग्लिश। अगर नहीं आती तो बेटा तुम स्किल तो सीख ही रहे हो, अगर भाषा नहीं आएगी तो आप इंटरव्यू में जाके क्या कहोगे? और जब कभी ना कभी तुम्हारा रोल क्लाइंट फेसिंग होगा और क्लाइंट अगर इंडिया में नहीं है, तो तुम क्या बैठ के उसको भोजपुरी सिखाओगे कि भैया मन ने ना आवे है, तू मेरी भाषा बोल तो मैं समझूं? डू यू रियली बिलीव दैट्स हाउ द कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड वर्क्स? Please refrain from making these comments in the question and answer session. They're actually rude. आप सब अभी एक भाषा सीख लो, चलो ठीक है, थोड़ा सा अगर किसी को आती है भाषा तो वो कर ले, अगर नहीं आती, अब विजय चाहते तो वो तमिलनाडु से है, मद्रास चेन्नई में बैठे हैं, वो तमिल में बात करना चालू करते तो आप कहते सर इंग्लिश में बोलिए, हमें समझ नहीं आ रही। So this we really in the professional world, if you're hoping to make it anywhere, please lose this, because this has got to stop.
Let me add one thing, sir. See, English में बोलना भी, see, TikTok में बोलना भी जरूरत नहीं है. See, we have people
Correct
who speak in English in a very broken way, but they still put an effort.
Exactly.
with you absolutely.
कोशिश करना पड़ेगा.
That is exactly what I'm saying, that try it, it's not difficult to do, and it at some level is essential. Some basic comprehension in communication is essential. So that's
Right.
that was my only point. But okay, having said that, I'm not going to dignify that with too much of time or our bandwidth. Vijay, once again, thank you very much. Really appreciated your time and your effort. And once the e-cell is formally launched, I'd love for you to come back to us as a mentor. There will be a lot of children, and I could read a lot of our students' questions. They're very anxious to become part of the gaming industry, and you'd be a great person to guide them. And you know, your advice would be invaluable. So
Hey,
we're looking forward.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And Uma, thank you for
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And Team ICAP, again, thank one and all, everybody who have joined us today for the session. We'll be back shortly with yet another interesting, informative session very shortly. Request all the audience and the respective people who have joined us today to stay in tune with your respective ICAP members. Please stay tuned with your center teams as well as for the respective ICAP team members. With that note, thank you, Vishal sir. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody.
Thank you
on
for
the
having
call.
me today. My pleasure. Thank you. Have a nice day.
You're not going back. You're coming back to us again.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.